sure all of you may have either sat in some of the sessions during the annual conference, annual tribal conference, or maybe you ran into him somewhere else. So this is part 3 of looking at areas to maximize your program resources. And this month we have partnerships. And, is everything okay?
Yes, Chuck's just loading up his...
Oh, okay. All right. And Chuck is the National Director of Tribal and Native Lands Program for Trust for Public Land. He has over 15 years of experience in the national service field. He has operated Native Corps programs on 9 tribal nations and provided consultation to over 100 tribes and Native communities. He has a bachelor's degree of science in business administration, management, communications, and leadership from Concordia University. He's also a U.S. Navy veteran from out of the 1991 Gulf War. And I'll turn it over to Chuck. And Chuck, if you have anything else to add as far as your bio.
Oh, no, thank you, Joyce. That was very nice. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope the weather's holding up where you're at also. We're still experiencing plenty of rain here in the Pacific Northwest, and it definitely feels more like winter than late spring. So we're not experiencing the heat wave that the East Coast is at all. But today I've been asked to come in and join you all and talk a bit about partnerships and the importance of diversifying your partnerships in order to sustain your program for the long run. If we look around at corporation programming that began in 1994, those programs that have been able to withstand and weather the different financial situations and the appropriations that Congress has given the Corporation for National and Community Service for programming, those programs that had the most diverse set of partners have been able to last this long. And those who couldn't diversify their partnerships and were really just trying to rely solely upon themselves have probably gone by the wayside. There are a few that may have been able to sustain, but for the vast majority, unless you've diversified your partnerships, you're going to have a hard time really building your program for the long haul. So in building partnerships, we have to look at the recurring revenue that we keep coming back to us from federal agencies in particular. And we need to talk about the key components of collaboration in partnerships. What do we need to do? And partnerships will assist the project in securing revenues either from individuals, government agencies, foundations, corporations, and other nonprofit organizations. If we look out there, the single largest funding in philanthropy is through individual giving. Individual giving represents about 84.5% of the total non-government giving in the United States. What's interesting about that is that in Indian country, in particular, we've had the hardest time really tapping into and cultivating individual donors. Getting individual donors to support our programming that we're doing out on the ground, whether that is with VISTA or Senior Corps or the traditional core program. And we really need to figure out how best to cultivate individual donors. And that's been pretty tough. Individual donors represent approximately $295 billion in assets that they gave back in 2006. So you can see that there's a large amount of funding that we can potentially tap into. If we look at philanthropy in general, both individual donations and foundation organizations, individual donors give about 1/17 or 1/16 of a percent to Indian country. That's a very small percentage. The assumption is that since Indian country represents about 2% of the population, that we've received between about 2% of individual donors, and that's just not really the data that's coming out through Native Americans and Philanthropy, who did the last survey. From foundations are the other second biggest giver in the individual sector, and foundations provide approximately $37 billion in fiscal year 06. And foundations, well, there are about 68,000 private foundations in the United States. They've only given about 1/20th of 1% in the Indian country. I would highly recommend, if you're trying to help your board or your local group try to understand where philanthropy is going in Indian country, I would direct you towards the Native Americans and Philanthropy website and request a copy of Pathways, Growing Philanthropy in Indian Country, that was produced by the Center on Philanthropy at Indiana University. It's coming out with different ways of how tribal programming can really reach out into the philanthropic world, both the foundations and individual donors, to better understand their mission and goals that can marry up with your programming to get those funds out on the ground to support what you're doing. Corporations are another major donor. Corporations in the United States are allowed to provide up to 10% of their earnings, of their profits, to donate back into the nonprofit sector. What we're actually seeing on the national average, though, is that corporations are only donating 1% of their profits back into the nonprofit sector. So there's still plenty of funding out there from individual corporations in figuring out how you can best partner with individual corporations. Individual corporations are a little tough because most of the time they're trying to figure out exactly how they can get a marketing piece or a public relations piece in order to push their product even through nonprofit work. So in developing relationships with partners, you have to be aware of that and make sure that your messaging is consistent with your programming when partnering with a corporation. Any questions? Okay, we're going to go on to the government. The federal government, of course, is the largest donor, especially in Indian country, providing grants. The government provides 26 different grant-making agencies, over 1,000 grant projects for Indian country, and the potential of $400 billion annually. About $500 million is left on the table every year that should be going out in Indian country because tribes or programs don't actually go out and actively seek those dollars and use them. That $500 million ends back up into the Treasury coffers. When I look around at the different federal agencies that are working to make grant-making programs in Indian country, I have to say that the Administration for Native Americans is one of the best. Commissioner Quanah Stamp has about $40 million in discretionary funds that she receives each year for distribution into Indian country. She and her staff work extremely hard to ensure that that money gets out the door, because she makes that argument before those of us who help her with the grant-making thing. If we don't get this money out the door and on the ground to the people who need it most, it just goes back to the U.S. Treasury. So I've encouraged many programs and continue to encourage programs to definitely jump on the federal government's website at www.grants.gov and start doing the research about programmatic money that could eventually get to your program to help support what you're doing for the long term. Also to develop those relationships with federal agencies that can help you in developing your long-term partnerships. The 8 steps to partnerships are pretty straightforward. Step 1, identify needed resources for your project. Be very specific about that. Look at your program, look at what you're doing out on the ground, and identify those resources that you have had need for in the past, what you need currently, and have a future need set out. And be very specific about those needs, whether that's a Meals on Wheels program, whether that's a senior program working and mentoring, having seniors mentor young people. Be very specific about what your needs are for your programming. An example may be that you would like to have an aid worker working with seniors. And if you want that aid worker and you don't currently have the programmatic money to hire that person, you may be able to partner with the county, with the state, or with the tribe's human health services program. But you need to know exactly, do you need one person, a full-time FTE, a part-time FTE, what the going salary is for that. So an example would be a community healthcare person. You may know you need to use one person. The average rate for paying for that person is $32,000 a year. So you put one FTE, community health person, at $34,000 a year. That helps when you're building your partners know exactly what they can contribute, whether that's in-kind sources, personnel, or funding. Step 2, identify the sources that can provide those resources. So again, mapping out the community assets that you currently have, both on reservation and off reservation. Many times tribal programs are hesitant to partner with outside organizations, usually because of historical wrongs that have happened. But as you take the opportunity to educate the non-Indians in your community about the resources that they can bring in helping tribes and helping them understand the cultural differences and bridging those gaps, you will be able to bring different and new resources to your community. Many times you can use the county at the local level and really bring those additional resources onto the reservation. Step 3, identify potential benefits your project can offer potential partners. Do you provide other resources that they may not be able to provide in the community? Are you that conduit into the tribe and helping them understand something that's of a particular issue with that partner that they need to get information out to tribal members? Can you provide better public relations in the community or on a broader state or national-wide level? Are there resources that you have that you can share in tandem with what they're providing you so that you're doubling your efforts and making the best use of all your resources together? Step 3, identify potential benefits or projects then for partners. Again, going back and really looking, a lot of times it is public relations. Step 4, research identified resource providers. So many times when people come to resources and looking at the different people you can use, they don't do their homework. I strongly encourage that before you approach a potential partner that you have done your homework on them, understanding who they are as an organization, who their leadership is, where they've worked in the community, so that you can really be able to help them identify, A, how they can help you, and B, how you can help them also. Step 5, contact potential providers. I'd say that, the best thing that you can do is just be present and going to their meetings at first before sending out a formal invitation. If they have community meetings or community gatherings or potential where you can meet them informally first, I always take up the informal meetings before I take the formal meetings, because you want to be able to build that friendship and partnership first so that they know you as an individual and then know your program and what you're trying to provide as a resource to the tribe. Then I go in with a more formal contact by determining the proper protocol for initiating the partnership in Step 6. Is it a person-to-person meeting? Is it picking up the phone? Or is it sending a letter? I usually try to make sure that I do all three and also send along a personal note thanking them for taking the time to meet with me so that you understand the protocols that are necessary for that agency or organization and your own in determining how you develop your partnership. Step 7, develop a formal proposal to the potential partner. So many times we're out there and we're making partnerships and we do it on a handshake. And a handshake's a good thing, but when it comes time to actually determine and develop your program based on maybe a conflict, if you don't have a formal proposal that they can rely back on and what was asked from each partner, it's really hard to maintain that partnership. So drafting up a formal proposal that is written detailing what you would like and what you will give is extremely important. Final step, Step 8, sign a formal document once all parties approve of what everybody's receiving and giving. And that formal document can take the form of a memorandum of understanding, a memorandum of agreement, or a letter of engagement. But either way, in any of those instances, using a formal instrument and having everybody sign really details the commitment to that partnership and the long-term viability of it. Questions? Maintenance of a partnership. Communication. So many times people actually forget because they take advantage that they just have a long-standing partner. Communicating on a regular basis via email, via phone, and by formal reporting will help and maintain and secure your partnership for the long haul. Making sure that even if there's no major reporting requirements, that you come up with some type of executive summary to explain the resources that you're receiving from that partner and how they're being best used on a monthly, quarterly, or a yearly basis is critical to ensure your partnership. Conflict resolution. In any good partnership, if there's no conflict, the partnership more than likely will dissolve. Conflict is a natural occurrence in all relationships. And therefore, you need to ensure that when you do your documents and setting out the protocols that you're using in working with your partner, that you also have a way of how you're going to deal with any conflicts arise. Who's going to be the point person from each organization to help resolve those conflicts? How are they going to be resolved? It's also important that when you're going through conflict resolution, that you really write out what the conflict is. As I used to tell people, if it's my problem, it's really just my problem until I share it with somebody. And the only time I'm ready to share it with somebody is after I've written it down and I understand what the problem is. Because if you're having a problem with somebody else, it's not their problem until you bring it to them. And the only way you can bring it to them is to discuss it with them and actually write it down to see where you guys can come up with mutual benefits. I also suggest when you're doing conflict resolution that if you have an issue, that you come up with up to 3 suggestions on what you think would resolve the conflict. That helps frame the discussion and allows your partner to look at 3 possible answers that they may agree or disagree, or they might have a different solution to the problem. But either way, that you're showing a commitment on your behalf that you recognize the conflict for what it is, but you want to resolve it in the best manner that all parties can agree to. And Finally, there's packets of information that have been sent out to you all that would have a list of different participant activities, and I strongly suggest that you do the activities that help you really identify all of these issues as you're going through and building partnerships so that you can sustain those partnerships in the long haul. ACKCO does a wonderful job of ensuring that that information is out there and helping you really be able to work through those issues. I will say also in conflict resolution, a lot of times the conflict arising between Indian and non-Indian communities is just a lack of understanding, and would suggest that if you can get access to an introduction to Indian nations in the United States put out by the National Congress of American Indians, it's a wonderful 20-page booklet that really helps non-Indian organizations get a better understanding of tribes as sovereign to sovereign, so that they understand those relationships tribes have with the federal government, state, and local agencies, and gives a perspective on federal Indian policy that a lot of people just don't have because it's not in their everyday reading. And finally, if you also are receiving the ANA's Messenger, the special edition on partnerships, it is a wonderful resource. If you look through and see what the Administration for Native Americans has done, especially in 2007 alone, out of their 93 projects, they measured 1,411 partnerships formed, or an average of 15.17 partnerships per project. You can't really ask for a much better statistic than that. To be an organization, community-based organization, and have 15 different partners bringing resources together to really help improve your community. Those partnerships, again, will help and sustain you in the long haul, will help in providing you not only just funding and services, but also advocate for your programming when the going gets tough, especially if you're providing something that's critical for your community. And that is my quick presentation.
Okay. Are there any questions? No questions? Chuck? Is anybody there?
Yes. Nobody used the chat or the raise hand that I saw.
We covered everything really well.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I missed the name of that, I don't know if it's a book or whatever, on understanding tribal government.
National Congress of American Indians. We'll put that also in the call notes.
Oh, good.
Okay. Could you also indicate the website for the Native American Philanthropy website that you talked about?
Okay. Billy, did you catch that?
I did. I have it down.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that Native American Philanthropy would be very happy to send out exactly what philanthropy is looking like right now in Indian country. And I think it's very helpful in developing your strategy for diversifying your partnerships and being able to reach out to foundations and individuals.
Chuck, can you explain a little bit about that NCAI document and how it's been effective with?
Yeah, I use it. I have a staff of about 500 at the Trust for Public Land, and the vast majority of the staff don't have or understand tribal governments for the most part. I've been able to use the National Congress of American Indians booklet on Indian nations in the United States as a 20-page document to really give them a quick overview of what issues are facing in Indian country and how contemporary tribal governments work in today's society. The booklet actually really outlines a brief history of the federal Indian policy. It does a whole section on frequently asked questions about Indian nations so people won't be embarrassed to ask some of the same questions that they've asked before. It talks about tribal sovereignty, treaties, the trust relationship the federal government has, what it means to be a federally recognized tribe, what are the different types of tribal government structures, what are tribal or Indian lands, and then also ideas about Indian gaming, taxation, state tribal relations, and actually some of what's going to happen in the future for tribal programming in the federal government. And so I think the booklet's not only helpful for staff, but can be helpful for you in really having opportunities to discuss these issues with your non-tribal partners. It also provides a number of resources that you can use both at the national level, everything from being able to access the Indian Law Resource Center down to National Tribal Justice Resource Center to National Indian Gaming Commission on any host of issues that you may have questions on.
And we'll put that link in the address, or we'll put that link in the notes, the web address. But if anyone wants to know it right now, it's www.ncai.org, and I'm sure you could contact them and ask them about their publications. NCAI is the National Congress of Americans Indians.
All right. Okay, any other questions for Chuck?
Or comments?
Okay. Okay, Chuck, we really appreciate your presentation and coming on and participating in our calls today.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate all that you guys are doing out in Indian country with the Senior Corps and the work you're doing with the tribal nations and our elders.
Right. Okay. Any other? If there's no other questions, then Chuck's going to sign off.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck.